Hello and welcome to HeirHeads, a not-so-serious look at the serious business of royal rumours, gossip and gowns. I'm Tom.
And I'm Maeve.
And we didn't do an episode last weekend, but we did get to go to Kensington Palace for our first royal field trip since the pandemic began.
Yes, it was very exciting. We had been hoping to go see Princess Diana's wedding dress for a while because that was sort of the big reopening exhibition that they had at Kensington Palace. But we also got to see the Princess Diana statue in the sunken gardens of Kensington Palace too.
In all its full glory, but from quite far away. You can't get into the garden to see it up close or anything.
And they have a sort of promenade, you might say, around this garden. So you can kind of only look at it from very far away. But even from far away, it still looks bad, I think.
Yeah, it sort of confirmed everything that I had thought when we saw the announcement and the photos and everything. It left me very cold.
I'd agree with you there, Tom. However, the exhibition inside the palace, I thought, was really, really good.
Yeah, really good. It was amazing to see the dress in person. For as much as the statue wasn't moving at all, the dress really was, and I was kind of surprised by that. I haven't really felt that reaction to a piece of royal history.
We skipped the main part of the Kensington Palace exhibition because we've been there a couple of times before.
Much as they tried to make us do it, we thought we weren't going to be allowed to go see the dress until we'd been through the entirety of of Queen Victoria's childhood.
But then you go to a sort of separate space where they have the Royal Style exhibition, and in there they have a bunch of toiles of various duchesses and princesses' clothes. But obviously the main event is Princess Diana's wedding dress, and they have it laid out much as they did for Meghan's dress, Eugenie's dress, Kate's dress. Those are the ones I've seen anyway, where it's behind a glass case, and they have it so the whole train extends throughout the room, and it really gives you a sense of the scale.
Yeah, it's such a good way of doing it because you do get to see it from absolutely every angle, and even though it's behind glass, you feel like you can see it very close up. Seeing the train and everything, I had no idea that it was sparkly from the wedding photos or the footage that when you watch it, the BBC coverage.
Yeah, and I feel like anytime I've seen pictures of the dress, I've always been surprised by how sort of beige it looks. That it's not really ivory or even white or not even really cream.
Yeah.
But yeah, up close, it really has that sort of tea-stained effect on the taffeta. I know a few of you had asked us, but yeah, it's exactly the same colour as in pictures.
Yeah. And I mean, I still don't love the dress. There's things the colour of it I find really maddening, and the embroidery on the front I think is way too fussy, but still seeing it I felt so God, this is such a spectacle, this dress, and also I felt sad.
Yeah, and I think because we had just reread the Diana Chronicles and were reminded that Diana herself had insisted on those big puffy sleeves and the general bigness of the dress, I feel it just made me feel really sad that she wanted this huge fussy princess dress, and as well as being very much a product of its time and honestly very ugly, it just makes you feel desperately sad for her that she thought that she was really playing the part by having this enormous dress with the enormous train that was so over the top, and that now when you look at it you just think of all the sadness that followed.
Yeah, I mean, with the other royal wedding dresses that we've seen, you see them standing there empty, but that the woman in question is off doing stuff. But with this, it was just a real reminder of her death, really. I think especially coming from the sunken garden as well. It was obviously very much on our minds. But it is kind of funny in a way how the royal family keep having to put on these Diana exhibitions.
Yeah, because, they also had some dresses in there that belonged to the Queen Mother and Princess Margaret, but, nobody was going to see them. Everybody was there for the Diana stuff. They had a few other Diana things as well. But, you know, the reason that everybody is there is to see the Diana dress. And I was saying to you when we were watching, like, it's so funny that the royal family fucking hated Diana, but they have to keep putting on exhibitions with her clothes and her jewelry and all this sort of stuff because they know what a money spinner it is.
Yeah. Especially after the last year, and we like saw so much about how the Royal Historic Palaces are like really hit hard by the pandemic, so they need to make as much money as possible.
Yeah, and I think just in general, like compared to seeing the other royal wedding dresses that we have seen, except maybe Kate's, because that one was like very memorable, it just seemed like such a spectacle, and it just felt so like it was carrying so much meaning and history, and you just felt the weight of it in a way that you don't really, obviously, you know, Eugenie and Meghan's were only a couple of years ago, so it's not even that long, but I think you just get more of a sense of the royal drama.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But speaking of royal drama, this week we've been thinking a lot about a feud between royal brothers. It's ripping this country apart, I think.
Obviously, we're talking about Prince Charles and Prince Edward.
For once.
This episode is such a classic, a vintage HeirHeads episode, Tom. We've got royal rumours, gossip, and again. But anyway, Edward, who's he, maybe you're asking? He's the Queen's youngest son, and rarely of any interest to anyone at all, but even royal watchers don't pay that much attention to him unless they're talking about his wife, usually Sophie Wessex. But the even more unusual thing about Edward amongst the royals is that he is one of the only royal men who doesn't have a dukedom.
Normally, the royal men get a dukedom when they get married. They get given one by the Queen. But Edward and Sophie are merely the Earl and Countess of Wessex. And instead, when they got married in 1999, it was announced that Edward would inherit the title of Duke of Edinburgh when Philip died.
And on the Wessex's wedding day, Buckingham Palace released a statement that said, "The Queen, the Duke of Edinburgh and the Prince of Wales have also agreed that Prince Edward should be given the Dukedom of Edinburgh in due course, when the present title held now by Prince Philip eventually reverts to the crown."
Well, we got a shocking twist on this story last weekend when a source close to Charles told the Sunday Times, "The Prince is the Duke of Edinburgh as it stands, and it is up to him what happens to the title. It will not go to Edward."
I was actually obsessed with this story. I feel
Yeah.
like we read it at like 2 a.m. on a Saturday or something, like right after it was published, and I was like, oh my god, this is amazing. Richard Kay had a big piece in the Daily Mail in which he pointed out, "It's hard to imagine anything more crushing for the Queen's youngest son than the ruthless certainty of those final 6 words."
So funny. But he also said that on the surface, this looks like a petty, small-minded, almost spiteful manoeuvre by the Prince of Wales, apparently denying one of his father's most cherished wishes. But ultimately, Richard Kay's piece seems to suggest that it's got more to do with Charles's famous slimmed-down monarchy.
Yeah, let's get into this, because I don't really know if I believe this, and I don't know what that would have to do with a slimmed-down monarchy, because, you know, we've talked before that Prince Charles's charitable portfolio is going to be streamlined when he's king, and that he's trying to apply this approach to how much and what the royal family will do when he's king. And because we've heard so much about how it's going to downsize, that likely means fewer royals will be carrying out engagements. So Richard Kay says it's against this background of a slimmed down monarchy that Charles has been developing ideas about working royals, their titles, and how they fit in with his vision of a modern Britain. Someone close to Charles told Richard Kay that rather than more royal titles, the prince prefers fewer. Well, so do I, actually. I prefer none at all.
Absolutely, but I do wonder if Charles's slimmed down monarchy also includes a slimmed down sovereign grant, because if there's fewer royals performing fewer duties, I would say that's less money.
I think you're being sarcastic there. There's absolutely no way that Charles is looking for a slimmed down sovereign grant.
Well, Richard Kay also noted that if Edward did inherit the Duke of Edinburgh title, it would then pass to his own son, James, who's Viscount 7. But he's being raised to expect a life outside the royal family. So I don't know if this is suggesting that it's like a waste to give this child who's expected to be living a quote-unquote normal life, a dukedom. But Richard Kay does also suggest that Charles might want to give it to Will and Kate's son, Prince Louis.
And I think just this sort of rollout or, you know, testing the public mood about this kind of thing has been so messy, whether or not it is part of the plan to downsize the monarchy. Like, the way this has been framed and the way people have talked about it in the past week is that Charles is like denying his father's dying wish, basically, and going against a very public, explicit commitment made by the Queen and Prince Philip.
Which I guess is like not totally out of character for Charles, because he has made it clear that he wants his own approach to the whole thing of being monarch. But it is very surprising to have all this happen in the wake of Philip's death and not to have sorted out beforehand. But something from this piece by Richard Kay that did sound very Charles to me was he said, reports at the weekend suggested Charles was tempted to use the title himself when in Scotland, but was advised his existing style north of the border, Duke of Rothesay, was senior to the Edinburgh dukedom. So he checked to see if he would sound better if he was Duke of Edinburgh, and then they were like, oh no, you're already top dog. And he was like, okay, well, let's just hide this title away forever.
The Telegraph's royal reporter Camilla Tominey wrote in her newsletter this week that there has been very little pushback from Clarence House about that story in the Sunday Times, suggesting that it is a true reflection of Charles's current thinking, and that Buckingham Palace has also refused to comment on this. But she said she would be very surprised if the Wessexes weren't significantly put out by this story. For more than 20 years, Edward has been expecting to inherit his father's title, and the couple have dedicated themselves to the Duke of Edinburgh award scheme because of it. And I think that's a big thing, that he's sort of the main dude in the Duke of Edinburgh awards now, and has been for many years. And I guess everyone just assumed he was going to get the title, and he talked about it as if he was going to be getting it. And when he did that interview with Camilla Tominey recently, he also referred to the challenge of taking on the title and all this kind of stuff. So it does seem like it was very much assumed that he would be taking it. And Camilla Tominey suggests that the Queen might end up intervening here. It wouldn't surprise me if the Queen steps in to sort this out, mindful that her eldest son appears to be going against her late husband's wishes.
Love when the Queen has to step in to sort out these, like, petty squabbles amongst her family. At the age of
95, she has to tell these fucking late 60, early 70-year-old men to stop fighting with each other.
Just give him his toy. Like, you already have too many. From the Richard Kay piece, though, I think it's the explanations for the situation that really take into account Charles's pride and stubbornness and his, like, legendary ability to hold grudges. Those are the ones that really seem to have caught people's attention. And he writes that friends of the prince wondered if this was because he wanted to absorb something of his father, who was often so critical of him. Basically
obsessed with this.
Yes,
so good.
This is basically saying that, like, Charles has so many titles that he could get the Duke of Edinburgh title and just literally bury it in his, like, huge pile of names. No one would ever use it again. It wouldn't go to anybody, and it would be like an ultimate fuck you to Philip, and be like, there's going to be no more legacy for this title that you worked on building or whatever.
That's like Shakespeare to me, Tom. Because we know that Charles and Philip had quite a fraught relationship, and that Philip was seemingly a very different father to Edward, that he was much more attentive. He would read him bedtime stories when he was little.
Nothing more terrifying than a bedtime story read by Prince Philip.
That he went to his graduation ceremony at Cambridge, and that he even supported Edward's decision to quit the Marines.
It's very different from the man who sent Charles to Gordonston to, like, make a man of him.
Yeah.
So you have to kind of wonder, is there an element of sibling rivalry, given that Edward seems to have won in terms of getting their father's attention? And Richard Kay says, after 2 high-profile interviews in which Edward talked about the challenge of inheriting his father's dukedom, it does seem as if there is a bit of Wessex fatigue among some members of the firm, and Charles has fired a warning shot.
I get that Wessex fatigue. I have Wessex fatigue, Tom. I thought when I saw those recent interviews that this was a very interesting PR move by the royal family to try and vainly try to increase Edward and Sophie's profile. But Richard Kay points this out as well, and he says the Wessex's physical proximity to the Queen at Windsor Castle and a discreet, absolutely not discreet, PR campaign which has emphasised their closeness to the sovereign and that they are considered a safe pair of hands has irritated some at Clarence House. And they have a figure close to Camilla who says, "It has been noted that they are often described as indispensable. It feels strategic." I can't believe Camilla gives a shit about this.
No, and I really can't imagine her, like, gossiping to friends about something which seems, like, so massively pathetic.
Charles, yes. Camilla, I have a harder time. But one of Charles's friends tells Richard Kay, Charles is making it clear that his brother may have jumped the gun over the title of Duke of Edinburgh. It is not a done deal.
Wow.
So I just love this. This is so, like, old school royal mess.
And it really was a done deal. Like, everybody involved in it had publicly agreed to this title being handed over. And, like, I mean, we shouldn't have to say this. I'm sure you guys all realise, but, like, we don't care and we don't particularly want Edward to be a duke. We don't think there should be any dukes.
No.
But we love this incredibly messy, incredibly petty public family spat.
Charles snatching the title out of his father's dead hands, not giving it to the chosen one.
But what do you think is the reason here? Like, do you think it's because of the slimmed down monarchy, or do you
No.
think it's a petty grudge?
I think if it was really part of a slimmed down monarchy, the communication would have been much more geared towards that.
Yeah.
And I think Charles has been gunning for this slimmed down monarchy for so long that they know the talking points, and they would have made it sound like it would save the taxpayers more money, and they would have tried to make it sound appealing to us.
Yeah.
Whereas this, to me, screams family grudge.
Yeah, I mean, you would have thought they would have got this all organised years ago, given how long, like you say, Charles has been talking about the slimmed down monarchy. It makes me wonder what that conversation Charles and Philip had when he visited him in hospital. Whether it was, like, Philip's final thing of, like, just give him the title.
Very Game of Thrones.
Thank you. And whether that was, like, Charles saying absolutely not. I'm just writing my own fanfic here for that meeting. But yeah, the fact that Edward seems to have fully expected that he would get the title up to, earlier this year means that I don't think there were any prior conversations about this.
Yeah, and I just feel like, we have heard a lot about Charles and Andrew not getting along, but I had sort of forgotten that Charles and Edward weren't that close either. And it seems funny to now have this other battle of brothers, another battle of brothers. Like, especially because, the big push last year was for the Magnificent Seven.
Yeah.
This team.
This united front that is so, like, riddled with holes.
Yeah, it's even more fractious than I previously believed.
And, I mean, this idea that it's all been the young royals who trying to do things differently, and that's what has kind of created so many divisions within the monarchy. It's, like, such bullshit. The fact is everybody involved is a massive egotist and can't deal with the other people getting any attention. It's been like that, for all time, it would seem.
So the Magnificent Seven dream is a farce.
And I'm distraught.
But speaking of teams, there was a football match between two teams last weekend. That's how football works. England, the one team, lost the final of the Euros to Italy, the other team. But it was the first time England had been in the final of a major competition in 55 years. So it was hell here, basically.
Yeah, it was awful.
This was the day that we went to Kensington Palace, and I was afraid for my life.
Yeah, we weren't even anywhere near the kind of big epicenters of fan misconduct, but it was still awful. But the whole of the Euros football competition in the UK had been accompanied by a discussion of the role of politics in sport and the role of athletes in politics, which isn't surprising for a lot of reasons, but not least of which is that Marcus Rashford, who's a footballer on the England team, played a huge part in making sure some of the UK's most disadvantaged children got fed last year against the plans of Boris Johnson. He was like pretty much single-handedly holding the government to account over how they were treating children. But the big problem in this competition seemed for some people to be that the England team were taking the knee before matches.
Yeah, and the team were booed by some spectators. Politicians like Boris Johnson and Priti Patel refused to denounce said booing, and many people in the UK dismissed it as gesture politics that has no place in the world of sport.
And they continued to do it, and it was a big discussion amongst like how the whole team supported each other and the decision to take a stand against racism. But there was no support from the royals.
Yeah, and we talked about this before when we were discussing Mike Tyndall's interview where he told Bryony Gordon that he doesn't support taking the knee. And Prince William clearly didn't feel that fans booing anti-racism was a good enough example of the racism that he is so famously bored of in football, that he's so fed up of.
Yeah.
Because he kept totally quiet about it as well.
And then in the final last weekend, it went to penalties, and the 3 England penalties that were missed were taken by black players, Marcus Rashford, Jadon Sancho and Bukayo Saka. He's only 19 years old as well, which, you know, what bravery to do that. And then also the aftermath of this is truly disgusting. The racism that was there, like the whole time, this competition before that, for the whole of the UK's history, basically. But it became even more overt and explicit. And in addition to physical graffiti and defacing of murals of the players, they received a huge amount of incredibly explicit racist abuse online.
Which prompted Prince William to issue a rare signed tweet from the Kensington Royal Twitter account in which he wrote, "I am sickened by the racist abuse aimed at England players after last night's match. It is totally unacceptable that players have to endure this abhorrent behaviour. It must stop now and all those involved should be held accountable. W."
This is it. This is all he did, one fucking tweet.
And this is something that we have been led to believe is one of Will's big causes. And, you know, we've already talked before on the podcast about how he seems to only be comfortable talking about a very specific kind of racism in a very specific kind of setting. But it seems to me and you that he is doing the bare fucking minimum again here.
Yeah, I mean, quite apart from the fact that he, like so many people in the UK, only cares about racist abuse when it's at its most explicit and directed towards individuals that he finds useful or entertaining, i.e. sporting figures and athletes, Will really demonstrated here that he has total ignorance when it comes to the environment that encourages this kind of abuse.
Yeah, and I think, you know, even his language in the tweet, like, aimed at the England players, like, he didn't even say the black England players, you know, call it by its name. And I think as this was happening, as I'm sure a lot of you saw, Meghan Markle immediately started trending because people were pointing out that he spoke out about this, but he never spoke out about the racism levelled at his sister-in-law. And I mean, it's hard to talk about things like what's happening on Twitter because you don't know how much of a reflection that is of the UK more broadly, because obviously there was a lot of American people and people outside the UK tweeting about that as well. But it just goes to show that the immediate connection that people made after seeing this tweet was like, well, what about your fucking sister-in-law?
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, you had a lot of division within royal watchers. A lot of people really outraged that this is all that Will could bring himself to do, and considering him to be very hypocritical. But other people saying things like, oh, well, what's wrong with him saying this? Like, would you rather he did nothing? He's trying to be a better person. He's trying to learn. But it's so frustrating because, you know, quite apart from the fact that his family created this horrible environment for Meghan, which, you know, ended up with them having to leave, he seems to have learned nothing from that. And he also wants to be seen as someone who is working to end racism in football without doing anything effective at all.
Yeah.
And that's the problem here, is that he wants to be seen as somebody who cares about this, but he is not willing to actually stick his neck out and realise that, people booing an anti-racist statement or, gesture might lead to explicit racism. Why can't he make that connection?
Yeah, and it just feels so lazy. Like, these words just seem empty to me, saying, it must stop now.
Yeah. Like, the words of someone who's used to just ordering people around and who's trying to apply that same thing to, systemic racism in the UK. And it's worth stating here that it wasn't only these football players that received racist abuse. From what I saw online, huge numbers of black people in the UK were on the receiving end of slurs and threatening behaviour. You can't just decide you're going to only care about racism in one specific area. It's all connected, and Will's tweet just really demonstrated how little he understands that.
I thought it was funny that the Mail on Sunday had a story today that Will had been privately comforting the three players, that as well as visiting the dressing room to commiserate with the team after the match, he has reportedly been in touch with Rashford, Sancho and Saka. And a Palace source told the Mail on Sunday that Williams' focus has been on supporting the players, and there had been private conversations
that Will is very comfortable making sure we all know about having occurred. This really reminds me of what happened after this match, was this kind of suggestion that Boris Johnson wanted to invite the England team to Downing Street for a photo op, and then it was suddenly shelved, presumably because the team didn't want to be seen as someone who wouldn't support them throughout this whole competition as they tried to take a stand against racism. Because it's all about making these white people, these white men, look better.
Yeah, and the report in the Mail also said that Will has been liaising with the Football Association about how pressure can be put on social media firms to do more to tackle the issue. It was just that one line.
Yeah.
No further details.
I mean, of course, the social media companies need to be better about online abuse. But there's also other stuff someone like Will can do, such as supporting taking the knee. He could have stepped in earlier, he could be more vocal about it. He could not limit his entire involvement in racism to very specific incidences within the world of football.
Maybe I sound like a demented Diana stan in saying this, but because on our last episode we were talking about how Diana showed the royal family the power of the royal gesture, Diana would have fucking taken the knee.
Yeah.
And it's so shocking that Will doesn't see that if he did that, people would love it.
Yeah.
That's how he could, channel the spirit of Diana in a nice way, rather than, having his wife cosplay as his dead mum all the time.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think that Will seems so out of touch with the spirit of what Diana did in terms of her royal work and really what was activism in some ways. But on to quote of the week.
This also relates to Diana, because Fergie, Sarah Ferguson, has her much anticipated Mills and Boone romance coming out soon, in a couple of weeks actually.
Should we do a book club?
Let's see how long it is. But she did an interview with People magazine to talk about the book and also about her memories of Diana, given it would have been her 60th birthday. And when she was asked about what Diana would be like today, Fergie said, "If she were sitting with me right now, I know she would say, I'm so proud of both of my boys and the wonderful wives they have chosen, because each has got her own voice." And, a lot of people message us, really rolling their eyes about her doing this interview. But I did think that was a nice thing to say.
Yeah, I mean, Fergie loves to, get randomly involved in things and, say stuff for the sake of kind of putting herself into the conversation. But this was at least a nice thing to say. And it is increasingly rare that you see any member of the royal family want to kind of bring people together or celebrate things that they have in common rather than splitting them all up.
And also, I think a lot of the sort of commentary around what would Diana think, blah, 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 is people sort of not wanting to explicitly say, but hinting that Diana would have hated Meghan. And I think you know, however mild this is, it's still sweet, I think, for Fergie to be like, no, she would have been so proud of Harry for marrying Meghan.
And also saying, like, Diana would have liked both of them, so maybe you don't need to hate one if you love the other, kind of thing as well, which is still a big part of royal watching and royal fandom.
I would also have loved if People magazine had asked her more details about her own dealings with Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah.
Or if she said anything of substance about Prince Andrew and his dealings with Epstein, but she just gave a kind of vague comment about how she wants to be co-parents forever with him.
And what would Diana have thought of your dealings with Jeffrey Epstein? Well, on to Fit for a Queen. Who have we got this week?
Kate Middleton did get to go back to Wimbledon after all.
We thought she might have to sit the rest of it out after she had to isolate due to an alert from the Test and Trace app, just like we had to.
Yeah.
She's one of us.
She got pinged.
But she still managed to get to Wimbledon 3 times.
The first time we talked about on our previous episode, but she went a further 2 times. And the outfit that she wore to the men's final, the last appearance at Wimbledon, was by far my favourite.
She wore a pink Beulah London dress. It was kind of like a blush pink. We've seen her in that colour a few times. But I thought it was nice. Like, it was very Kate. It had buttons down the front.
Yeah, it had it had that sort of fuller skirt. She was wearing those block heel pumps from Aldo, which are very sensible for walking on the lawn. And those bloody Empress earrings.
They're so horrible, those earrings.
And the Amaya kids mask. 2 things I could have done without, although obviously not without a mask, but without that particular mask. But I just love this dress, and I thought it was such a nice colour against the green of the lawn and all that stuff. And she was with her father, Michael Middleton, and they seemed to be having a very nice time, which was very cute. She had those lovely Ray-Ban sunglasses on, and I just love that colour on Kate. It's sort of a nice, sort of cool pastel, so it's not too kind of saccharine. And I thought the length, the fit, everything I thought was perfect. Although I did have a moment of pause about the belt.
Yeah, the belt had a very prominent buckle of the same shape and similar size to the one you can see on the new statue of Princess Diana.
Because I did notice that first. I was like, is that meant to be a sort of nod to the Diana statue? Could it be? And when I think like that, usually the answer is yeah.
Yeah.
But that wasn't really a point I saw people talking about very much. So I wonder if actually for once Kate was being too subtle.
Maybe, because I thought that she was trying to kind of combine Diana's style with her style, with the like 3 million buttons going down the front and then the belt, as she was kind of creating a sort of hybrid look. But yeah, maybe she should have been more overt, like with the polka dot skirt outfit that we talked about in our last episode.
Whatever the intention, anyway, this is one of my favourite Wimbledon outfits that she's worn.
It was certainly better than the other outfit that she wore that was bright green with white shoes, and it was like she was dressed as a tennis court.
First in line.
It's Oprah again.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about how she has been nominated for an Emmy for her interview with Meghan and Harry in a category that I didn't even know existed, called Outstanding Hosted Non-Fiction Series or Special.
Which honestly seems like a category they invented for Oprah.
They do have some other nominees in there though, so Oprah's going to be going up against My Next Guest Needs No Introduction with David Letterman, Stanley Tucci Searching for Italy, United Shades of America with W. Kamau Bell, and Showtime's Vice. So, I mean, I don't know how into David Letterman the Emmys are, or Stanley Tucci, but I feel like Oprah's probably guaranteed to win here, right?
Yeah, I would have thought so.
The Emmys are on September 20th anyway, so we'll find out then.
And it's going to be a big day for royal fans because of all the nominations that The Crown has.
Yeah, it got 24 nominations. Very deserved, I thought. I mean, even Emerald Fennell got one for playing Camilla.
The Emmys care about Camilla.
But yeah, we'll be hoping, obviously, that The Crown wins as many as it can. We love the most recent season. But I was wondering if next year we might see a nomination for Meghan Markle and her pal David Furnish.
Yeah, Netflix has announced that they're going to be developing an animated show called Pearl, which is described as a family series that centres on the adventures of a 12-year-old girl who is inspired by a variety of influential women from history.
Incredibly Meghan.
Such a Meghan project.
Such a Meghan project. And yes, she's co-created this with David Furnish, who, as well as being Elton John's husband, has also worked on the films Rocket Man and Romeo and Juliet.
She's bringing in the big guns.
That does sound like it'll be a cute show, though.
Yeah.
And not as boring as what we had thought.
Yeah.
Hopefully. I think that's about it for today.
If you've been bothered by our neighbours, the baby birds, I'm sorry for that, but it seems like they're in their kind of teenage years now and they've got a bit louder, a bit more vocal.
We will be back in a couple of weeks.
And until then, thanks so much for listening.
And have a great week. Bye.
Bye.
The idea somehow that I'm going to go on exactly the same way, if I have to succeed, is complete nonsense.